Andrew and Sue, as I said, just a little bit of our background. We love running together. We're up to about 60-something marathons side
indeed.
by side. And our focus is really helping runners, people who run together, families of runners, and corporate running groups. And we're about enjoying running, helping people improve their running and really getting the most out of it and being able to apply it to all parts of life. So we mentioned the Facebook questions. The agenda?
Yes, the agenda for this evening's webinars. First of all, just the introduction of what we're here about, and of course then moving on to the final 10 days countdown to your event. We'll be then taking some question and answer times, finishing with 5 recovery tips before we move on to close.
Okay, so for most runners, it's around this element. It's the training, getting ready for the event, and then the event, so the action, and that's where our focus is, and that's great. That's what we often do. But our experience and research has shown there's a bit more to it than that, and we add this other element, which is around doing it over time and being sustainable. We don't want to get hurt. We want to enjoy it. We want to get the most out of it, and so that involves our equipment, the basics, injury-free, and the way we recover. And then the third element is that really connects it and gives us the long-term value and gives us the connection to the rest of our life and helps us improve and grow, not just in our running, but everything we do is this, well, why am I doing it? What's the future we're trying to create for ourselves by our running, our fitness, our health? How might some travel and different events add to our learning? And how do we go about learning and capturing it? And most Monday nights we run a session just on the learning and runners review improvement element.
Trying to improve. Exactly.
So when we put together the grow, the act, the sustain, with a combination of our foundation, our preparation results, we get to enjoy our running year in, year out. So tonight is very much about the pre-event and the event, but it's in this context of this overall approach to running that we have. And so if you're just joining us, we're just making a start. We're going through on the presentation for the 10-day countdown, and this is a little bit of our background and approach to making the most out of your running. Sue and Andrew here. If you've got a question, please just enter the question box or raise your hand. We'll have all the microphones muted so we don't get noise problems, but we can try and turn you on or at least take questions via the voice box or Facebook. So, each of the days we have a theme, and we're going to run through those with a few tips for each day. So 10 is race and shoe check, 9 is travel,
8 is a picture of success, 7 is moving on to dress rehearsal, 6 scenarios and strategy, then 5 to relax, day 4 to travel or to chill, day 3 to commence loading, 2 the big snooze, and day 1 the day before, final preparation before race day.
So we're going to go through those a lot slower as we go through, but that's the snapshot. 2 important things before we go any further. It takes 2 weeks for training effect to impact performance. So often people want to go out and train like crazy in the last 2 weeks, cramming that last minute, a bit like studying for an exam. It's not going to help your performance. In fact, all you're going to do is increase your fatigue, risk injury, and undermine your performance. So hard training in the last 2 weeks is not going to improve your performance. We're going to get that into our sort of psyche. Secondly,
and final preparation can really improve your performance, or as we mentioned, if you overtrain and you push too much in those final 2 weeks, it can actually undermine your performance. So very important that final 2 weeks, your final preparation can really improve your performance if you do the right thing.
Yes, so you can undermine by too much training.
And you can improve your performance by tapering correctly and really preparing your food and fluid intake as well.
Okay, so put those 2 together and away we go. So the last thing we want to say before we get into the 10 days is most people will have be on their training program and have set routines. That's what we encourage people to do as part of the training and build-up, and so we don't suggest in any way you change our working routine in the last 10 days. So if you've been training with certain goos or products, if you've been eating food, if you've been wearing certain clothes, if you've been training in certain routines and it's working, now's not the time to change it. The tips here are to supplement that, or if you are missing spaces, you can certainly consider these, maybe trying some things in your last weekend of running this weekend just to check them before race day. But it's a golden rule, don't try anything new on race day unless you're in absolute desperate dire straits.
You've forgotten everything and lost everything and you need something desperately.
Nothing else has worked. Okay, so stick to your routine, and to this webinar is about supplementing that, not trying to change it. Anything you'd like out of this that you haven't been doing but it's too close to the race, you might try it after your next main event. Okay, so day 10. Sue, you could take us through these ones?
Well, now's the time, day 10, to purchase. It's the last day you really could purchase new running shoes. You want to make sure that your shoes have been broken in a little bit, but you don't want to have them worn out when it comes to race day. So it's the last day to buy new shoes and break them in before race day. And also to check all the race details. Make sure that you've read your handout, that you know what time the race is starting, where you need to be at what time. Very important, particularly at the start. A lot of us receive nowadays some e-tags where we have to take this piece of paper with us to an expo to actually pick up our bib and our race pack. So it's making sure that you've got that all under control, that you know what you have to do to pick up your race number and bib. A lot of us are getting mailed out for Melbourne Marathon, and we've received ours. I hope everyone's received theirs.
So these are tips that are applied to all events and some of the specific tailoring to Melbourne. And so, yes, if you haven't got your Melbourne kit in the race, then we suggest you contact the organisers. In worst cases, you can pick it up from the expo on the Saturday. But you should keep an eye out for it if it hasn't arrived. We know that a lot of people have
got theirs already. And it's also the time to book your race week massage. Now, if you've been having massages regularly, or regular intervals, it's the time now to just tick off the boxes for some of those little details that you can get under control now, and one of them is to book your race week massage. You've probably got a day, if you've been having regular massage, that's the day that you want to get your final rub down. On the other side of the coin, if you haven't been having regular massage, now's not the time to think of having a serious sports massage before the event, because it can lead to some muscle soreness if you're not used to having your muscles rubbed down. And also to prepare race splits. Now, this is an interesting one. A lot of people really like to know what their rate per kilometre is, and as well as apps and various other mechanisms like Garmin's, other programs that you can put on your phone or on your heart rate monitor. Race splits, simple one is a little slap band, and that can also can be applicable for 10K, for half marathon. For marathon, basically what it does, it gives you a rundown time of where you should be at each kilometre as you go through. And you can find this at?
Well, you can go and print your own here at marathonguide.com, and here's the address. That you just search for Pace Band Creator, and you put in the time of your event. If it's your marathon, it's up the top. If it's other distance, down the bottom. What time you want to run, and it will print off, and you can then print out this strip, cut it out, and you can stick it to your wrist and wear that. So if you're not an apps person but you do want to keep splits, this is a great way to go. And we sometimes suggest that you do your ideal time, but then your second time, so that you've got both to look at if you need to do it as you go. So day 10
is also the time for your last speed workout. As we said, not going to gain any huge amount, or you're not going to gain any real training benefit from in the last 2 weeks. So last 10 days out, your last serious speed workout. And with diet, we're still keeping a normal diet. We're not doing anything too outrageous or strange, but it is time to start increasing your carbohydrate by about 10%, just being aware that you need to start changing the composition of your diet, not eating more.
Yeah, we're big on doing all you can to slowly hydrate through the last 10 days if you're not somebody who's good at hydrating all the time. One of the big mistakes that I often make or have made is trying to hydrate the day before, 2 days before, and then you're spending all night waking up, going to the bathroom. So if you can just carry that bottle and build up your hydration through the first sort of 7 of the last 10 days, so that with about 3 days to go, you're nicely hydrated, then you can just top up without having to risk that sort of overhydrating at the last minute and having it go through too quickly. So start hydrating every day at this point. Day 9, if you need to travel, and for most of us that are in Melbourne going to the Melbourne Marathon, this isn't one to do, but if you're coming from interstate or if you're going to a race away from home, it's a good time to check your travel. So travel arrangements, if you are local and you're going to a race in your own city, then train timetables, car parking, what roads are going to be open and closed, where you can park is a big one. And so for a big city marathon like Melbourne, sometimes the parking can be tough. So check that out, give yourself plenty of time. Again, it's the Friday before, the weekend before, always good for a bit of last-minute fine-tuning, some motivation, some tips. Maybe it's a blog online, and of course we recommend
we recommend the Couple on the Run blog, of course.
But there's lots of great books and blogs around, and Jeff Galloway for the technical tips and things is always good. And of course, this is the sales plug for the webinar. Is Couple on the Run is a great read, they tell us. Day 9. It's either rest or a 45-minute run, depending on what's in your training program. And it's a good thing to maybe test your Friday meal. So one of the things we're going to talk about is your 3 days of carbo loading for marathoners, 2 days for half marathoners, day and a half for 10Kers. But on the week before, the Friday before, if you can, if you haven't been doing this regularly, test your Friday night meal because it's your main meal heading into the marathon, and hydrating.
And day 8 brings us to picturing your success. And I think that one of the important things is to keep a mental picture of yourself crossing the line successfully. It's wonderful to put those pictures in your mind, to have little images to think of as you're running and to prepare yourself for that. And you might like to talk a little bit more about this as your specialisation.
For those people on the webinar tonight that have been using visualisation, either in their running or other parts of their life, this is what this is about. For those that haven't, there's a lot of power in imagining yourself, seeing yourself in the various situations. So I always see, even in my training, I see myself running strongly next to Sue crossing the finish line because we always finish together. But I also see on really hot days when I struggle, I see myself being strong and determined. So you imagine the different scenarios and see how you're going to react, which prepares you to deal with them on race day when it can be a bit tough. And if you haven't thought through how you're going to react, sometimes you make decisions on the run, not the right decisions on the run.
No.
So we'll talk a little bit more about scenarios in a couple of days' time, but this is a good one to think of.
And also it's a good time now to purchase your energy gels. Hopefully by now you've also worked out what sort of energy supplements you're going to use, whether it's blocks, whether it's jelly beans, or whether it is goo. So purchase those, have them already there, you know they're done. A few days out, just before it gets very busy, you're ticking the boxes and crossing off all of those little things that you can get done.
We should point out there are lots of different brands, and we just use Goose. This was our stash from the Sydney Marathon a couple of weeks ago. So we're not suggesting any one brand. It's what works for you, and there's still time to test before Melbourne or whatever marathon you might be doing in 10 days' time. Cross-training.
Cross-training is a great way of still keeping up your cardio fitness without putting the strain and pressure through your legs and through your joints. Cycling, indoor cycling, swimming, some water running. There's lots of different types of cross-training. I'd avoid heavy weight training at this time as you're leading into your event, but so many different types of activities. If you regularly do yoga, that's a great one as well. Just keeping the body moving without overloading the joints.
Okay, on day 8.
You can also do,
cross-train, maybe a 45-minute run, and your diet, it's practicing what you're going to eat the day before. So it's a day for practicing your lunch and your dinner, and again, hydrating. Day 7, dress rehearsal. So it's for marathoners. You'll have done your last long run, either depending on your training program, probably the week before, even 2 weeks before. But most of us are still going to head out for a 10,
maybe 10 to 15.
10K to even 2 hours for some people. So it's a day to do your final dress rehearsal. If you haven't run in your race gear, give it all a once check over.
And I think, yes, this is a really important point to wake up at race day, wake up time. If you haven't done that before, it's a great way to sort of just wake up your body, feel what you're going to feel like at that time. It's also a great time, of course, to do your run at that time and see what conditions feel like, what the air temperature is, and just for a lot of people that run in the evenings, this could be a really big challenge to start to think about running at this time in the morning.
So practicing your pre-race meal, again, don't just leave it to the day of the race. If you're not used to a regular pre-race meal, and I'm not suggesting this is the contents of it, but practice your pre-race meal so you don't get any surprises on race day, and again, something that's you're used to that you know is going to sit well with you.
And also for non-breakfast eaters, we really do recommend trying to eat some form of breakfast if you can before you go off to the marathon.
And again, for running out at race time. So maybe not such an issue for people that are used to running in the morning in an event like Melbourne, but again, depending on where you do most of your running around the world, a lot of the European races are maybe at 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock or even 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So having your last run at the time of your race is always handy. And as I said, there, dress rehearsal day, wear your complete outfit. This is a photo from the precursor to the New York Marathon, where it was particularly cold. It wasn't our actual running outfit. This was our pre-game outfit. But so doing your run, don't buy a new shirt and wear it for the first time on race day. Don't buy a new pair of socks and wear it on race day. Trial them at least once or twice before, and this week before dress rehearsal is a good time to do that. And again, thinking about your race recovery. So it's always good to have a bit of the post-run soreness, but we want to minimise that. And so again, thinking on the week before, how you're going to recover, what's your routine going to be. So your run today, a week to go. Most people is going to be 45 to 60 minutes. It certainly we suggest no more than 2 hours for marathoners who want to just do a slow, easy, tick the legs over. And on the food front, it's practice day, so your pre-race breakfast and then your recovery foods.
And it is important, the recovery foods. A lot of people forget about the recovery foods. You've got to sort of re-carbohydrate load, get some protein in to rebuild muscles. Very important.
Okay. Day 6, it's about scenarios and strategy. So you've done your last run, you've done your dress rehearsal, you're into the week of the event, and we want to revisit the different scenarios. So people that we talk to about training, we suggest that you do this early in your training and you anticipate all the things that can happen. If you've done that, great, now's the time to revisit. If you haven't, here's the time to think about it. So what will you do if it's really, really hot? So as a general principle, we can't run as fast when it's much hotter than we're used to training in, and so we need to slow down. We need to plan for that. What will you do if it's particularly cold, if it's particularly wet? What will you do if you're ill? What will you do if you're injured? What will you do if you're going to run with somebody else and you get lost or you break up? What will you do if all manner of things,
you get a blister start to form, there are lots of different things that can happen, and it just helps us to be prepared for all.
And that's a great one too, blisters. So one of the things that's really common is people start to notice a blister and they think, oh, it'll be right, and they keep going, and half an hour later that blister's got really bad. But because they're not prepared to stop for 2 seconds and just adjust the sock, and maybe that sometimes solves the problem. So we suggest that if you're thinking a blister's coming on, sacrifice a couple of seconds to adjust your shoe and your sock, because that might solve the problem and you might then avoid it going longer. So another thing with the scenarios is thinking about when you're going to take goos, when you're going to drink. How are you going to deal with drink stops? Are you going to practice running through, grabbing a cup and drinking on the run, or are you going to run into the drink stop, pick up your cup, have your goo or something and walk for 10 yards to make sure that you get the drink in? So again, no right or wrong, but it's planning ahead and thinking for how you're going to do this and imagining yourself doing it. And if you are someone who wants to run for a particularly fast time when you're trying to save every second, then we do suggest that you practice, down the local park with a bench or something, drinking on the run, just picking up cups and keeping on going. So planning for the different scenarios. Fine-tuning your race strategy, and again, so that's, what time are you going to run per kilometre? Are you going to run faster in the second half, slower in the second half? What time splits?
Yep, and prepare that band if that's going to help you, or your apps, all of those different things.
Yep. And of course, we mentioned earlier the idea of scenarios, and so then once you've got your different scenarios and you're visualising, you're linking your strategy, your success, and you're really planning out your race to do the best. And we suggest that you do make some notes of that, because it's good for you after the event to look at what you said you were going to do, what you thought you would do, and what you actually did, and get to understand why you did or did not do that. Now, the other thing with strategy is, particularly, it's easy in these big events to start out too fast, get caught up running with other people. And so you need to be careful, not just at the start, but also throughout the day, running to somebody else's race strategy, because if you go faster than you've trained, that will
you're not going to be able to sustain it throughout the length if you haven't trained for it.
Okay. And if you are going to run with somebody else, which we always do, this is the time to just talk about how that's going to work. Are you going to stay together no matter what? Are you going to run the first bit and then split up? Are you going to talk? Are you going to be quiet? How are you going to support each other? What works? What doesn't work? Are you going to run side by side or a couple of metres apart? So again, no right or wrong here, but you don't want to get out there on the day and one of you thinks you're going to run together and the other thinks you're going to run together for the first half, and then you split up and it gets really awkward for one or both of you or whatever it might be. So if you are running together, check those details off in advance.
And so in terms on the training front, day 6, we're sort of thinking about 30 to 45-minute run at a moderate, gentle pace, easy. A little bit of speed if you're feeling like maybe sort of 15 minutes of speed work just to tick the legs over, pick up leg pace, leg turnover, that's good. That always is a way of just accelerating your leg speed a little bit, feeling not so sluggish. And on the diet, we're just maintaining a normal diet, being aware again of that, just gradually thinking of adding more carbohydrates in, but basically not trying to do anything too out of the ordinary. And of course, hydration, continuing. Which brings us up to day 5, and this is a day to relax. We've done as much as we can do for a moment. We're going to take a space here, and this would be a good day to have that pre-race massage. Nothing too intense, but just easing out, if you have regular massage, just easing out any small knots that are forming and making sure that your muscles are loose and long before race day. It's also a time to put together a playlist if you're someone that really loves your music and you run with an iPod. Time to put together a playlist. What's going to motivate you at what point on the race? You can probably put together something that will really stimulate you as you run.
They don't have a guy playing the piano. This is from Big Sur in California. They don't have a guy playing the piano, but I think they do have lots of other entertainment.
Yeah, I think we might get some rock bands or something along the way. And it's also a good day to clip your toenails. So often we have come across people, and we originally made some mistakes early too, about thinking the night before was a good time to clip your toenails, only to either clip too much and cause a problem that way, or even to forget and get to race day and realise that they hadn't been done. So it's a good thing to put on your checklist.
Yep, for a few days before. So on the running front, 30 to 45 minutes or rest, depending on your training program and your routine. And it's a normal diet day with, again, working on that hydration. So day 4, if you are travelling to get to the event, this is the day to do it, we suggest, if possible. It doesn't always work out that way. And if it's just a normal day at the office or at home or working or whatever you're doing, then it's a day to chill, take it easy, and know that your training's done, know that your preparation's done, and getting ready to enjoy the next few days and the lead up to the race. So get the travel done if that needs to be done. Business as usual is your alternative. Relax no matter what you're doing, if it's at all possible. And on the running front, 30 minutes or rest, again depending on your routine, normal diet and hydration. And so now, Sue, we hit to the
Yes, the big
all-important
three.
days.
For marathon runners, the big three. Thursday, well, day 3 before the event is when we commence loading. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go out and buy 10 muffins and start cramming food into your face. It just means starting to alter the composition of your diet, really putting an emphasis on carbohydrates, and that means it could be potatoes, it could be rice, it could be bread for those people that like bread, pasta, just starting to really put in some either low glycemic or high glycemic carbohydrates if you can tolerate them, but starting to really load up your muscles with glycogen and energy.
So that's the carbo loading, and it is loading, not overloading.
Correct.
As someone who's made the mistake on more than one occasion. It's a good time to check your race pack number and chip. So we mentioned earlier, for people who are running in Melbourne, that the race packs are posted out. So if by this day it hasn't arrived, you certainly want to be calling the marathon office and making sure what's the arrangement for you to get your kit. But because we're coming up towards the weekend, we want to just check that we've got our number, we've got all the clothes we need, we've got everything there, and it's in the one spot. Particularly if you've done a few marathons, you sometimes put things away in a shelf, in a cupboard, and forget where they are. And if you're new to it, you might not realise at the last minute, oh, there's some piece of equipment that you don't have. So get that all out a few days before. If there's an expo and you can go, and I think with Melbourne it's on the Friday night and the Saturday.
Saturday and even Sunday, if you finish the race and you'd like to go and check out the expo, it's open till 1 p.m.
So one of the things as it leads up to the day before, particularly in 2 days before, is to spend as little amount of time as you can on your feet. And so Melbourne's not so bad because it's not a monster expo, but a lot of the international races really have huge expos where you can spend 3, 4, 5
yes.
or more hours. And so to do that the day before is sometimes risks all of that good training you've done. So you want to get that out of the way as soon as you can if you're going to go and enjoy the expo. And it's a good time to start checking the weather. It's getting close, and so just again adjusting your clothing. Make sure you've, if you need maybe some plastic bags or some extra things to keep warm and dry beforehand. Whether or not you're going to need some sun cream, extra clothing to keep warm. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's time to start to get an eye on those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think if you noticed that suddenly 3 days out that your weather forecast was showing 30 degrees and sunny on race day, you might even become more aware of your hydration, which should be pretty reasonable anyway, but you might really start to top up the electrolytes and look at some other products or things that might help you on race day too.
And so day 3, we suggest it is a rest day, but again, sticking to your training program if it's working for you. And this is a day where you're about 65% of your intake is carbohydrates. You don't want to be eating anything new, and as we said, it's carbo loading, not overloading. And so because you've been to the taper, hopefully you're probably not feeling that hungry anyway, so it's just a task of getting those carbs in and knowing that and trusting that you've done the training, you've done the preparation, and this is really your fine-tuning now, stocking up for race day.
And it is hard to trust yourself sometimes, I think, too. But
so the big snooze, 2 days out. Often people think, I'm going to have a good sleep the night before, and we're worried about alarm clocks, we're nervous, we're thinking about the race, all those kinds of things. So the time to get your best sleep is not the night before the race, but the night before the night before. And so it is the Friday night. So sometimes it can be tempting to head out and have a quiet, sort of relaxing night, but it is a good one to head home early and get a good sleep because it's going to stand you in good stead on race day, and you can get through the next night with the nervous energy without sort of your normal sleep. But the Friday night is the big one. So plan a restful night. Certainly the next day you're going to be easy on the caffeine, but by now you're probably starting to be a bit careful on your caffeine so that you do get that restful night. And even if it's not sleep, but it is just restful, that's going to help.
You're going to get about 70% of the same rest quality by resting and relaxing as you would sleeping. So there is a benefit in just getting off your feet and lying back, kicking back.
So if you're into this stuff, this is one for Sue and mostly for the ladies.
Well,
but
I don't know. I think there's a few speed men out there, triathletes and bike riders as well.
Okay, so it's the day to shave wax and anything else you need to do of that ilk. Again, not leaving it to the day before and whatever can go wrong there. And this is the last, from a dinner perspective, this is the main meal for half marathoners and marathoners that you want to enjoy this dinner. The night before dinner, again, is light. It's not going to help you a lot, but you can get into trouble if you eat too much of the wrong things the night before. But the night before, again, is the key time for your last.
It is. This is your big pasta meal, your big risotto meal, pizza meal. Some people do like pizza, but this is your big carbohydrate meal. And
once again, something that's you've had before is ideal. Something that's quite not too spicy. And with the pastas, it's a general rule of thumb not the ones that have the too creamy in the sauce area. So again, relatively plain, something that you're used to, your own recipe if you can, but if you're traveling or you're away from home, something that's not likely to be overly spicy or garlicky or something that's potentially going to hang around and upset you. Your run, once again, it's about your routine, but we suggest it's 30 minutes or rest. And as we said, diet, nothing new, nothing spicy, about 65% carbohydrates, and it's your most important food day. Hydration, by now, you want to be pretty well hydrated, being careful through the afternoon and the evening because you do want this to be your big sleep, and you don't want this to be a night that's overly interrupted by being overly hydrated and having to get up through the night and visit the bathroom. Okay, the day before,
final preparation. The day has dawned. It is the final preparation day, and there are a few things that we really recommend, and one of them is to love your lunch. Think of lunch as being the main carbohydrate and big meal of your day's eating.
So I'm a big one for those big potatoes with some coleslaw, no cheese and cream and stuff, but just something plain, but it's good carbs.
Some sort of rice dish.
Rice is good.
Yep.
Maybe some pasta if you really like your pasta. But again, the no spicy, no new rule applies. Off your feet, as we mentioned, this is the day to rest, and it really does save you up. We did the seminar similar to this live last weekend. A number of people talked about they go to movies, they do things like that. So it's a good day to be resting and saving your energy up.
Because so many times people say they're having a rest day, but then they run around and do so many errands and housework or gardening, and they're exhausting themselves physically. So it is a time to pamper yourself.
And it's also a time to resist the temptation because you're feeling good. You're tapered. You're there. It's action time. So you've got that extra energy, and you're feeling like I want to get out and do something. But it is all about resisting and saving up for your event. The night before, the afternoon before, is the time to check your race kit. If you've had to travel, I suggest you do this early in the day just in case you have forgotten something in your packing and you need to go and buy something. Not that I've done that too often, but I have done it on the occasion.
One shoe? No, not
one shoe was a bit tricky, but it is good to make sure you've got everything set the day before. And the other thing is with pinning on numbers onto race tops and singlets and those kinds of things, putting chips on where they need to be done. So again, you don't have to worry about it the next morning, but also sometimes when you try to put the pin through in the dark and then on the excitement of getting off to the race, the last thing you do is have to deal with the blood that comes out, or you forget your race chip or whatever. So it's a good way to prepare and think about the race, and also to have yourself set for race morning.
And another thing was also the sunglasses factor that so many of us leave home in the dark. Good idea to make sure you put things like sunglasses and lip balm, just any stuff sun cream that you just might not think of in the dark on the day.
And your transport, again, if you're out of town, it's obvious because you're not sure how to get there, so you do need to check it out. But it's even probably more important sometimes when it's in your hometown, because trains don't run at the same times that they sometimes do. They run for some people but not for everybody. Car parking is restricted, roads are closed, etc. So prepare and plan your transport the day before, and hopefully you don't go in something like this, which took us to a race in Nevada a couple of years ago. This was the race transport at the park, and stand up in the back of this jalopy to get taken a few miles to race start. So hopefully you'll be travelling better than that in your event in 10 days.
A little bit less stressful.
And alarms. Set not just one but two. Maybe it's a wake-up call. Maybe it's it's a phone and it's an old-fashioned watch or whatever it is. But again, you've done all the work. You've prepared. Nothing worse than being either late or missing altogether by not having those two
alarms set, definitely.
And caffeine and alcohol, again, going to dehydrate you, so you want to be minimising any intake the day before, although the odd beer is often claimed to be good for carbohydrates. So I'm not recommending it, but I do know a lot of people who swear by it, and it works for them nicely.
And again, it is what works for you.
Okay, so day before, personal choice. You might run for 20 minutes, maybe about that. You might go for a bit of a short walk, or you might just rest. And your food, breakfast and lunch focus, light dinner. So as a rule of thumb, we always our night before is often pancakes and maple syrup, because no matter where we are, when we're away from home, something you can get that's safe, that's light, that's easy to eat. It's can be found in lots of places, and it doesn't cause you any grief. So it's a light meal the night before, but again, something you're used to if you've been training to that, or something it's not going to be overly spicy or cause you grief the next day. And of course, it is the big hydration day too. Another big hydration day to be aware of it. Hope. Yeah. And so race day, here we go. Sue, what's on the agenda? Oh, well, the thing we recommend to do is to wake up or set your alarm, one of those alarms, to wake you up at least 2 hours before the race. That's to get yourself awake, to get your body clock alert, to start thinking about your breakfast, your hydration, all of your bodily functions, to get yourself moving, and to leave yourself enough time to get to the actual race start. Usually, wherever we live, getting to a race start involves some amount of time, and we want to make sure that we're there without any panic or any fuss. So arriving early, once again, there's nothing worse than getting caught in a panic, missing the start, or having to go to the start without getting to the toilet breaks. So traffic can be congested. Toilets, there are, no matter the best of the organisers, never seem to have enough, because we all of us runners want to go at the same time. Then we've got to drop bags or gear potentially. So there's a whole bunch of things to do. So being early and taking, we'll talk about warm clothes and staying warm at the start in a moment, but it's just not worth risking all of that effort and stressing on the day by not getting there at a good time. So early, we would suggest to be about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the place, yes. Depending on the place before. And so staying warm at the start, again, is a photo from before the New York Marathon where it's particularly cold, but a lot of events they'll pick up old clothes that you might wear and throw away, give them to charity. But again, you've trained all this time, $10 for a blanket or a ground sheet or something to stay comfortable if it's going to be particularly cold and there's a long wait, then that's worth doing. For those people doing Melbourne, Chicago in 2 weeks' time or 10 days' time, not such a big deal because you can pretty well get there and there's not a long wait. But depending on where you're at, it's always an important thing to do. And the old garbage bag, modelled here by Sue, looking exquisite in Rio. It's cheap, it's easy, and it's incredibly effective to just punch a hole in the bottom of the gar bag, slip it over there, and wear that for half an hour to get in amongst the starting corrals, and you can then rip it off quickly and throw it away a few minutes before, and cheap, easy, and no problems. Yeah, you don't need to necessarily have an old clothing. The gar bag can do the job very well. And we talked earlier about race strategy and plans, so this is about not getting caught up in the moment, not running to somebody else's race plan, but running to yours. So you know what you've trained for, you know what you can run at, and so even in the first kilometre or two, when everyone charges off and it's crowded, you might go extra fast or extra slow, but within that 2 to 3 kilometres you want to settle into your pace, and if you have gone a little bit slow or a little bit slow, don't try to catch it up in the next kilometre, just eke it back. You've got the rest of the race to go, and by trying to catch it up in 1 kilometre you'll end up strife. And if you have gone too quick, then you have gone too quick. That's okay. Just set back, not to balance your time, but back to your normal speed, and if you've caught it early enough it won't cause you too much grief.
Drinking early. We really recommend getting fluid in early during the race. When you get to those first, you might come to the first drink station and think, I don't need a drink, I'll run through this. It's better to drink early in the race and get to the last one maybe and not think about it. So we always recommend drinking early through those first few drink stations.
And there's an old saying, no matter what happens, just keep moving. Particularly, they talk about this in the Comrades Marathon in South Africa, 87 or 89 kilometres, 12 hours to get there, and they just say, well, when the sun comes up, start running and just keep on running until either you get there or the sun comes down. And if you keep moving, you will get there, but if you sit down or you stop, then you never will. So no matter how tough things can be, just keep on moving, and sure enough, you'll come good and you'll get there. That's usually the way it works.
Yeah.
Okay, so into the question box or onto the Facebook page, we're going to just stop and see if there are any specific questions that people would like to ask, and then we've got a few tips about just the post-race recovery after that. But any questions or anything that anyone would like to ask into the box there? So one question was around how often you should take a goo or a supplement. And again, the sort of general rule of thumb is about every 45 minutes, but that, again, depends on you. Hydration and goo is a bit like when you need it. By the time you need it, you know it's too late. So suggest you get in a little bit ahead on those things. Another question on water versus energy drinks.
Energy drinks, yeah.
So once again, what you've practiced for, our preference is to mix it and have some energy drinks and some water.
Yeah, and sometimes you do get a strange taste or an uncomfortable taste in your mouth. The Powerade can just almost psychologically give you energy or feel as though you're having something sweet that's giving you a burst of energy, as well as the electrolytes within it that do give you the benefit if you're prone to cramping or sweat a lot. So there are reasons to actually take on Powerade as well as water.
Okay, so we've got another question here about a stitch and also a cramp. And any thoughts you have if those things come about?
Right. Well, with cramp, it's much better to try and prevent cramp before it occurs than try and fix it when it does. But if you do get a cramp, we suggest walking for a while to try and stop the activity that caused the cramp in the first place, which was the running. Quite often it's from a fatigued muscle that's just not firing properly and spasming a little bit. So by walking and then putting in some gentle stretching, not harsh stretching, gentle stretching, and holding the stretch, holding the joint extended until the muscle eases, you can stop the cramp. And then maybe walking for a while to ease out that spasming, and hopefully you can get running again. But could be an indication that you need to pick up some of that electrolyte drink and try and pick up your fluid and salt, that you're getting a bit depleted, and that's another reason why your muscles might be cramping. Stitch is oxygen trapped in your muscle, and what you need to try and do is to release that oxygen or to release that pain, and to do that try and lean into the muscle. Most stitches come in the abdomen, and it, as I said, is sort of like a trapped air pocket. So trying to lean in and to dig your fingers into the sore spot, try and increase blood flow to the area can help by massaging the area as hard as you can, but mainly the contraction of the muscle, squeezing the abs, and then hopefully easing out and breathing out completely. That air's gotten trapped somehow. Try and really exhale. So deep exhalations can sometimes really help those stitches too.
So I don't know if I've got a question from Stu, but I can't actually click on it and get it. I'm going to just, Stu, I've turned your microphone on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry, I couldn't. I saw you had the question, but I couldn't find it on the box. It didn't disappear, so I'll just turn you on if you could ask us that way.
Just looking for some advice about what I can do now to prepare to minimise the risk of some severe and acute calf cramps during the run.
Yep, I'd be suggesting a spray that we use called Cramp Stop. It's a magnesium spray, and it's available at chemists, believe it or not, your local pharmacy, and we've used it in some ultra marathons, in particular trying to stop calf cramps occurring. You spray it onto your tongue, and you can use it quite repetitively at the first niggle, the first tiny little niggle that you're getting some sort of cramping in the calf. And as I just mentioned, I don't know whether you heard about trying to stop, walk for a moment if you feel that cramp start to twinge, the spasm in the muscle, and the gentle stretching. Cramp Stop's brilliant. Also, people like salt tablets. People that cramp a lot, they tend to find they're low in sodium, and that's one of the reasons that they do get the cramps. So even the old-fashioned salt tablets, which again you can get from chemists or from triathlon bike shops, often have that sort of thing. But the Cramp Stop's a beauty. It's a very small spray, about like a lip balm size, that can tuck into shorts pocket, something like that, and you can use it quite a few times, and we found it really effective.
Thanks for that.
No problems. So I think that's how we got. Yep. Have a great run, Stu, and everybody else. Just turn you back. So the last one here, last question I got here, Sue, is on running and walking and things. And so we do a lot of work with Jeff Galloway, and Jeff Galloway is big on the run-walk method. So if you, depending on what you've done for your training, you may have been using the walk breaks or not. What we suggest for most people that if you haven't trained to run non-stop, then you might want to walk through your drink stops and make sure you get your drink in. And if you are going to incorporate walking, the counterintuitive aspect is short walks early mean that you can run strong in the second half, whereas if you're running non-stop until you can't run anymore and then you start to put in your walks, then it's too late and you're not going to pick up your running. So we've got a webinar coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk more about the whole run-walk method, particularly as it relates to increasing your distance, dealing with injury, and going on to ultras. But again, depending on what you've trained for, that will have an impact. But short walk breaks to make sure you get the drink in and get your goo and anything else is often a good way to go.
And also another good way of stopping cramping muscles is to change the firing mechanism of that muscle by walking for a while too. So that's also another good way to just ease out any spasming or tight muscles, to break up the activity a little bit.
Well, folks, unless we've got any other questions, I think we'll move on because we're getting close to the end of our time. Again, we just always plug the old book, which is available in all good bookstores, and there's not as many bookstores as there used to be, so it's certainly through Amazon for Kindle and hard copy, and from the Couple on the Run site. So it's our sales piece for the night. We've got a couple of more webinars coming up. We do most Mondays, not every Monday, but most Mondays we do a half hour, maybe 45-minute, what we call a runner's review, and we work through whether it's training or races. We look at specific issues, so what we were meant to be doing, what's happened, and we just deal with questions and help people learn, grow, and improve with their running and apply it. So that's you can register for, just rock up on the night. Mondays, 8 o'clock Australian East, and we do most Mondays except for when we're travelling. And for people who might be interested, as a last sort of minute, getting your head into the space, we're doing Introduction to Running Essentials this time next week, and that's basically taking us through those 9 boxes that we talked about at the start, the all aspects of the running. So getting the most out of it, actually some summary around the pre-event, and then the recovery equipment, etc., etc. So they're the next couple we've got coming up, and you can get details through the through our newsletter, through our blog, and through the Partnerunning community webinar page. That's for that. And then, so yes, there is the webinar tag on the Partnerunning community. 5 quick recovery tips. So we've done all the hard work, we've done the training, we've done the event, and depending on what's next, we really want to be extra careful with our recovery, or we at least want to have some ideas what's going to help. Often that day after the race, it's a hard-earned, enjoyable pain, but we don't like to keep it going for too much longer.
And it is still a pain.
It can be.
It can
and so,
be.
Rehydration and nutrition.
Yep, I think
straight after.
Yep, and I think we mentioned that carbohydrate is again important, believe it or not. After you finish your event, it's important to put some of that energy back in your muscles that you've depleted, but also some protein-style foods. As much as it might not sound appetizing, chocolate milk is a big recommendation. Yogurts, those sort of food when you get the chance to just rebuild some of the muscles that have been put to hard work.
Okay. Compression tights are often good, particularly if you need to fly after a race or if you need to drive, and we swear, because we do run quite a lot of back-to-back 2 or 3 weeks in a row marathons, we swear by sleeping in the compression tights for 1 or 2 nights. They're particularly good for recovery in that way. The cold water and ice, again, if you're keen, it's certainly, I swear by it, it helps, but again, sometimes if you're not needing to recover quickly for the next weekend or thereafter, then sometimes the price of getting in the cold water can be more than
it's worth. Definitely.
But it does work, and Melbourne with the bay is a good spot for that, or the local swimming pool. Just watch out for any boats coming behind you that send a wake in, and resting and walking. So we have time and time again people that want to talk about how wonderful they are because they ran a marathon or a half marathon and then they went out and ran big distances the next day. Well, if you're lucky, you can do that, but it's playing a risky game, and for most of us, that's just not a common sense thing to do. So you've trained hard for a number of months, you've built up, you've done an event, you've done a wonderful job, you've done much better than all the people who never even got to the starting line, and so a day, 2, 3, 4 of walking maybe cross-training, swimming, cycling, indoor cycling, and walking, just building up until the soreness goes, and avoiding those injuries is well worth it.
And one of the things to remember is that your muscles might be sore, they might be slightly sore, but they could be slightly damaged. And if you go out and try and put some intensity into your work in those first few days of whatever exercise you're doing, you run the risk of actually damaging the muscle further, of tearing, straining muscles and ligaments that are already strained slightly. So always bear that in mind. You could make a slight injury a lot worse by stressing too much with your exercise.
And one of the other things, again, regardless of the distance, whether it's the 5K, the 10, the half, the marathon, or something else, is we often experience after a couple of days we've gone through the high and then we go into a bit of a low period of, well, what's next? I've put all this effort in, and we get a bit doom and gloom. So one of the things which is really good for lots of reasons is to think about, if you haven't already, what's next. And so by starting to plan that next event, that helps us sort of avoid any big dips in sort of our motivation or our excitement or energy or our thinking, and gets us on the road to our next event. So that's always a good one as part of our recovery. And so, Sue, we're coming up to the end.
Yes, to our 9 o'clock.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I think the main thing is that whatever sort of race or run that you have is to enjoy it. Take advantage of looking and speaking to other people around you. Enjoy running through the city of Melbourne or whatever event it is, and just enjoy the experience. Whatever happens on the day, you are so far ahead of so many people that are still sitting on the couch.
And so this is Sue and Andrew O'Brien. We'd like to thank you all for coming along. We'd like to wish you all the best for your event coming up, no matter what it is. If we can help in any way with questions, you can contact us via the blog, via Facebook, via info@partnerunning.com. There's our two web addresses, Facebook, Twitter, and we hope to see you along again soon. We will be posting tomorrow, within 24 hours, the recording of this webinar and sending out a small little checklist that we have to go with it. So if you want to refer that on to friends or get back to it, then...
And there's also the Partner Running radio show, which we should mention, which is on every Tuesday morning between 7 and 8 a.m. On Blog Talk Radio.
Yes, Blog Talk Radio,
Partnerunning, and we co-host the show with a fellow runner in Sydney called Trent Morrow, and we talk about all things running from all around the world, and we would love to have people's questions for the Ask Sue segment and any comments or feedback about the show or suggested guests. That would be great.
So thanks, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We hope it was a worthwhile use of your evening. We certainly enjoyed your comment. Thanks for everybody who had questions. If we did miss anyone's question, in fact, I think we might have missed one. Did we miss a question from Tim? If we did, I'm sorry. I'm good on running. I'm not so good on webinar technology. So if we did miss a question from anybody, please let us know, and thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.